So if anyone wants to get started, unmute your mic and ask a question. You can go ahead.
I'll go ahead and go. I think we talked a little bit about it last time about meeting up in the astral plane, and we had this idea to create a sigil to create. You could call it like unified intent, and so we're gonna try to create this symbol to unify all of our intent to meet up in the astral plane. So like other symbols around societies, like the peace symbol, for example. You see the peace symbol, you think of peace, you understand what peace feels like and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily think that the symbol itself is what would help us achieve this. I think it's the strengthening of intent by utilizing the symbol in people's minds that it helps. Do you have any thoughts on that? Did I explain that clearly?
I do understand exactly what you mean. I think it's all a matter of frequency, because I think it's a matter when I want to travel to a particular person, for example, it's hard for me to explain how exactly I do that. But to me, it feels like I am taking my idea of that person and I'm like placing, kind of a marker at that location of where that person is, and then I kind of mentally pull myself to that. So, as a matter of fact, it's just like tuning to that frequency. And I think the sigil is a good idea because I think it's a very simple. I think it's a very similar process. I think that sigil would kind of establish a touch point that everyone can focus on, and it's the intent behind it and all of that. I think that's a good idea. I think it would work.
So just a little bit in addition to this, what we've had some questions about, like, what sort of environment. So like if we use the sigil, and let's assume that it works and that we are able to meet up in the astral plane, like we don't understand like what the environment would be like. How would that be decided? You know what I'm saying? Like, do we just get placed randomly in a place that we're allowed to be, or you know what I'm saying?
Well, probably best to focus an intent on associate that sigil with a intended place.
So we want to create our own visual environment in our own heads.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, if you read a lot of the books that are associated with the Monroe Institute, like anyone who does the focus level stuff, like Bruce Moen and Rosalind McKnight and like that. If you read their stuff, they talk about a place called the Park, and they talk about the Park being a park-like setting in the afterlife, and it's common that when people die that they automatically kind of show up there or are taken there by someone that greets them, when they're having a death experience or whatever. They can be met by loved ones or whatever and taken to the park, and from there they can be shown, where in the afterlife to go, and they can be given an orientation and all of that. So I think if you create this sigil and try to focus on or meditate on it being associated with a place like the park or just any kind of park-like setting that has specific features, and I think that other people can pick up on that telepathically and use that as a focus to meet there.
Thank you. That's very helpful, because we just couldn't figure out, like, if we had to pick a place or if we would just end up somewhere and it would be picked, by the universe or whatnot. So thank you.
Okay, that's kind of a big problem, and it's a whole other can of worms, because a lot of people, when they go into an astral projection, when they leave their body, they're like they have an intent to go somewhere, and then they're caught up by like astral winds or whatever. It's like this irresistible force that pulls them to a place, and it's almost like they're going to a place where that's designed for their highest good or whatever, or meant to teach them something. It's almost like they have their higher self pulls them somewhere, or maybe it's guides, or something. Anyway, irresistible kind of pulls them there, and it's like seemingly random, but it's almost always, in my experience, to teach a particular spiritual lesson. So it's like you're being pulled to a place for a reason. So yeah, it may not be easy to control. And a lot of times when people consciously make an effort to go to a specific place, they end up somewhere else anyway because of this irresistible force or something that is supposed to happen to them. Anyway, hope I answered your question. But yeah, that's a whole nother
Yes, that
problem.
was very helpful. Yeah.
Even if you focus on the sigil, you might not find yourself there. But anyway, so in the chat, in the text chat, I see a question from Myth, and it says, Bob Peterson, have you ever met any religious characters while astral projecting? Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Muhammad, Krishna, Ganesha, etc. The answer is sort of. I don't know if you guys follow my blog at all, but I've got a blog article. Let me see if I can find it here. I wrote a blog article about this. Where's okay, so the blog is from the very end of 2015, and the blog is titled "Meeting Jesus Christ Face to Face." And what it is this is a experience, an out of body experience I had. Many years ago, of course. This happened in May of 1996, and I wrote about it in my second book, which is Lessons Out of the Body. That book is out of publication and hard to find. It didn't, to be honest, it didn't go over real well. But in that book, Lessons Out of the Body, I tried several experiments in which I tried to contact God. It was, got all these, ideas of what I'm going to try to accomplish right in at OBE. And a lot of times the problem is that your OBs are really short, so your time is limited. But one of the ideas I got in my head during that time frame in 1996 is I want to try and contact God. So I went through a whole series of experiments where I would leave my body and then I would try to say, okay, I want to see so-and-so or whatever. And I wrote a chapter. The chapter in the book is called Chasing God. And so anyway, one in this particular experience in May of 1996, what I did is I induced an OBE and I started thinking about Jesus Christ and God and their relationship between Christ and God. And, I've got this whole thing where I believe that we're all parts of God and, that we're all interconnected. So anyway, I was thinking about this while I was trying to, how your mind can sometimes wander and then you refocus and you have to clear your mind of all those wandering thoughts, right? And still your mind. But my mind kept dragging me over to that direction, and then I'd still it, and then it'd drag me further, and then I'd still it. So I kept holding my mind focused. But when I left my body, there was like this, it's like my image that I was thinking of Christ, Jesus Christ, seemed to become real to me. So when I was there out of body, it seemed as if I was really in the presence of Jesus Christ, and I was like blown away by it. And so, and I'm not a very religious man. I mean, I used to be way back when, before I started doing OBE stuff, I was a raised Catholic. So so I'm a recovering Catholic is what what I joke sometimes. But so I'm not a real religious man. I don't go to church. I don't follow any faith or religion. I don't go to churches. I don't go to synagogues or temples. I mean, that's not quite true because I love to visit those holy places, and sometimes you can get the best connections there at those sacred sites, and they're full of positive energy. But I've been in some of the holiest temples and churches in the world, but my point is that I'm not overly religious, and but here I was out of body, and it seemed like I was in the presence of Christ. Well, at that point, I'm like freaking out, right? Because it's not something that happens every day, and it's not something that I expected. Hang on 1 second, I got to take this call.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Hello? 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 Sorry about that. I'm expecting an important call here, and that was probably a spam call.
Someone from the astral.
Yeah, it's probably my car warranty is expired or something. So anyway, what happened is I felt like I was actually in the presence of Jesus Christ, and I could feel like His love overwhelming me in that, and it was like He was bombarding me with Christ's love and all of this stuff, and I'm like freaking out. It's like it distracted me so much that I like got pulled right back into my body. So it wasn't a very long astral projection. It happened, it's just a matter of probably less than a minute. Um, but I've been in other situations where they weren't recognizable. I've been in astral projection scenarios. I've gone out of body and found myself like in a group of students, and I can see that at the center of this group of students, including myself, there's a master who is teaching the crowd or teaching the students and giving spiritual lessons. And I'm just one of the many, right? Um, so things like that, but I've never identified that type of master as any person, any persons that we know, like Ganesha or Krishna or anything like that. It's always just been some anonymous master that I knew was a big shot over there, if you will. So hopefully that answers your question. You can read my blog article. If you go out to my website, robertpeterson.org, you can find a link to my blog. And I've got, my blog is kind of two parts. One part I do OBE book reviews, and I've done a lot of them. And the other part is I do astral projection, just general articles. And this particular article is in the general articles, and they're listed by year. So this is at the top of 2015, which is since they're in reverse order, this is from December 8th, 2015 is the blog article. So if you want to read it. Am I still here?
Yeah, we hear you.
Hi, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we can. I posted the
Um,
blog article for you in the text to voice channel.
Okay, great. Let me see. Let me look through some of the other questions.
Someone was having some technical difficulties, so there's not that many yet. We've moved that to a different channel so we can get support. I have the question that I wanted to ask that someone you asked from last time. You actually stopped right before a really upvoted question, so I'll ask it now. How do you? So this is from Disrupt. How do you enter AP? How do you enter astral projection from a lucid dream?
Well, again, there's an article on my blog about that too. It's one of those questions that keeps coming up a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to know it, and it's actually the easiest way to astral project is to become lucid in a dream and realize you're dreaming. And what you do from there, and this is explained in that blog article, what you do from there is you basically dispel the hallucination, because when we're in a dream, we are surrounded and engaging in a hallucination. And so everything that you see and touch, including your own body schema and everything you see and everything you do and everything you hear, it's all hallucination. When you're dreaming, when you become lucid and turn it into a lucid dream, basically, you're still stuck in that hallucination. And so what you got to do to get to the to an out of body experience is you have to dispel the hallucination. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. Usually, for me, it's just an act of will. For me, it's just I just say I've had enough, and I like shrug off the hallucination. And of course, the trick is you don't want to wake up your physical body. So you don't want to focus on, waking up from this dream hallucination. You have to dispel the hallucination. And I think it might be related. I think there might be other tricks to do that. Like today in my blog, I posted a book review for a book by Eddie Slasher, and it's one of the best books out there. It's like 4.5 stars I give it. But he does a lot of that. Most of his OBEs that he puts in the book are coming from a lucid dream, and he describes the process very similar to mine. Is he'll basically find himself in a lucid dream, and then he'll like basically say all hallucinations have to go away, or Frederick Ardima in his book, which is another excellent book on out of body, he would like wave his hand in front of his eyes, and it's like, okay, when I wave my hand in front of my eyes, everything that's hallucination is going to disappear, and what I see is real. And so what this Eddie Slasher would do is a similar thing, but it's more like mine, like an act of will. But he would basically find himself in a lucid dream. Let's say he's in a room full of people. He would basically command or yell or scream, kind of like William Buhlman also says. William Buhlman says things like, lucidity now, or reality now, or higher self now, or any of these things. It's a similar act. You could just say that, the hallucinations have to leave now. And Eddie Slasher actually recommends like screaming it, so that you're like using a power voice on the astral, of course, to just command that all the hallucinations go away. And what he'll find is that when he's in this room full of people, that more than half of them will disappear, and he'll be left with just a couple people in the room, and those people are the hallucinated crowd is gone, and these people that are left are the real ones that are there. So sometimes you can get bleed through from the dream hallucination into the astral experience, and you have to be careful not to that you're not hallucinating. You have to with an act of will just dispel that hallucination, um, and stay focused on the what's not hallucinated and what's real. um, and that kind of leads back to in my very first book, out of body experiences, how to have them and what to expect. And that's available also on my website for free. I talk about this thing that I came upon when I started doing this, called what I called it the fantasy trap. And what that is um, if you are in an out of body experience and you see something and you focus on that, and then if you let your mind wander and start to think, well, what if, let's say you see a cell phone, and you think to yourself, well, what if that cell phone rings, and what if I pick up that cell phone? If you start to play what if games with anything out in the astral, if it's a hallucination from a dream, like a bleed through, it can actually suck you back into the dream state. So you can lose your lucidity and go completely back into a dreaming state. And that's very frustrating. That's the fantasy trap, because it's like that's like a trap that if you fantasize about something you're seeing or experiencing out there, if you start to fantasize that, it'll suck you back into the dreaming state. So that's my take. I mean,
No,
I
that's
kind of went in a roundabout way, but basically, from a lucid dream, you have to use an act of will to dispel the hallucination of the dream, and then you can also test reality, right? Because, like in a lucid dream, your body schema will look perfectly normal. Your hands will look normal. Your legs will look normal. Your whole body will look and feel normal, like it does in the physical, but it's a hallucination. If you're in an astral, um, and you're not hallucinating, then in my experience, your body schema tends to be more on demand. I like to call it Schrodinger's astral body, because it's more like on demand. It's not there until you actually try to perceive it. If I think about my hands and decide to look at them, then suddenly they'll appear, but they won't actually be there unless I'm focusing on them, right? So anyway.
that's a really good answer. That's basically how I would describe it as well. Because it's like it's like in physical life when you're walking around and you've been in daydreams so much, and then you suddenly realize, oh, you become present. I often compare it to like the present moment. Uh,
Yeah. Or if you're driving and you get distracted because you're, daydreaming and you lose, like highway hypnosis or whatever, you kind of lose focus or whatever.
yeah,
So you have to stay focused. I've only had one lucid dream in which I was not able to dispel the hallucination and go to the astral. Um, and it quite surprised me. It took me by surprise.
I've
I
had that
tried and
too.
I tried and I tried, and it's like, what's going on here? This is wrong. Why isn't the hallucination going away?
Yeah,
It's kind of funny.
yeah.
It's like it's not supposed to do that.
I
It always
thought
works.
the way I thought I've had that too because most of my astral experiences are from lucid dreams as well. Because it is the easiest way, like you said. But there was one particular one where I just couldn't get out of the dream, and I understood it as I must be so deep into my subconscious that this is just something I need to uh, work out and just go with the flow of the dream and see what it's trying to tell me or something because I couldn't get out.
Yeah, and when you're in a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming, and you know what you're seeing is not real. It's hallucination. You're completely conscious, but when you're in the astral, you know you're not dreaming, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of like waking life in that you know that what you're experiencing is really there or whatever, and we don't really know what we're picking up on, right? You don't have astral eyes that see. You don't have astral hands that touch, right? It's all mind stuff. So my belief is that we're picking up on some kind of stream of information, and I think it's similar to the process that happens when we're in the body too, because what we experience in the body is kind of a self-created hallucination too. It's based on a stream of information that's coming in from somewhere, wherever, and we're taking and translating that into more physical terms. Um, but yeah, it's a really deep subject. The whole subject of perception.
yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, and I should warn people that I'm expecting an important email or a call, something like that, and I may have to drop off suddenly if that comes in.
Yeah, that's fine. If you have a just leave. Yeah. You did you plan to come back or just leave from there?
I probably won't have time. That'll
Yeah.
probably take the rest of the evening.
No, that's fine. If you have a call, just leave and yeah. Thank you in
Okay.
advance. So yeah, anyone
Let
want
me
to
see. Oh, it
unmute?
looks like
Yeah, there's a few
looks like things.
questions.
Yeah, it looks like people have been chatting here, and I haven't scrolled down.
I
Let's
think
see.
there's a question from Ennis in yellow text.
Ennies. Hi, Bob. I'm a huge Vedic astrologer student, and I love to analyze everything through it. This means I would love to analyze the abilities to astral project through astrology. Naturally, I searched for your date of birth. If it's not too personal and weird to ask, do you happen to know your ascendant or time of birth? Um, yeah, no, I don't really know. I I don't remember. I mean, I was pretty young at the time. No, I'm just kidding. Um, I was born on
Just
April 14th, 1961,
That was
and
really funny.
I just realized.
uh, I was born on April 14th, 1961, and I don't know what time of the day it was. My belief is that it was probably um, late, later in the evening, like 10 p.m. or something, but I really don't know. I personally don't give much weight to astrology. I've never really, I tend to be more of a science oriented guy. And to me, um, it seems absurd that like planets and constellations and things like that would influence us. And yet also seen evidence that it may, so I can't quite ignore the evidence, but I haven't had a strong enough interest to pursue it myself. So I've never really given it a lot of thought. I don't think we need to it might be an interesting thing to research from an OBE point of view. Like, if you're born under this sign, it might be more likely to have OBEs or have an easier time of it or something. But I tend to believe it's more related to other things than that, than astrology, whether it's, and I know nothing about Vedic astrology and how it differs from the normal, the astrology that they do here in the United States. Let's see. I see the OFU. My question, if you dissociate or AP while on a hallucinogen drug, is it actually AP or is it just a hallucination? What's an astral experience and what's just hallucination? Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. You hit on a good point. That's why I've never really tried a hallucinogenic drug. I'm like the only kid in my high school who never, and this is back in 1979, 78. I was like the only kid in my high school who never smoked marijuana. I've still never tried it. I've never done DMT. I've never done ayahuasca. I've never done mescaline or any of those. And I'm not against these things. I mean, especially like marijuana, I think is becoming more common in the United States, and I think it should be legal. And I'm libertarian, so I believe we should all have the freedoms to decide what goes into our bodies. But uh, the thing is, if you take a hallucinogenic drug, how can you tell the difference between your hallucination and reality? And that's why I've never wanted to do those things. It's like as soon as I start messing with hallucinogens, can I trust that my experience was a real OBE? Because I've had so many OBEs in that, and I suppose I could compare them, but it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like it's a hallucinogen, and marijuana is a mild hallucinogen. Um, I've actually done a lot of studying of hallucinogens, so I know kind of what they do to the brain and all of that. Um, but I've never really trusted them. I've never trusted an experience in which they've been used. Now, having said that, I mean, Susan Blackmore is a famous parapsychologist and skeptic who lives in the UK, and she's at first, when she was still in college, she went into a party and she was extremely tired, and somebody passed her a joint and she smoked it, and it led to like this very long out of body experience, and it was very convincing to her. She became, this champion of out of body experience, if you will, and her first book on the subject was very pro OBE. And this is before she became a skeptic, but the more she studied it from a scientific point of view, the more she became skeptical of it. But my point is that the smoking of marijuana is what led to her experience. And again, I'm like, well, how can you trust it if you're taking a hallucinogen? How can you trust that it's a real, genuine experience of something non-physical, right? It could just be hallucination. So yeah, that's my feelings on the topic. Let me see. I'm going to scroll around here to. Can you have OBE if you have aphantasia? I do not know. Let's see. Do you know what you were in your past lives? That's again from Myth. The subject of past lives is very fascinating to me. As a matter of fact, it's my wife's kind of pet subject. I read OBE books. She reads past life books, or at least has read quite a few of them. She's actually more of a fiction person than non, but when she reads nonfiction, she reads books on past lives. And I think there's some overwhelming evidence that reincarnation is a thing, and that past lives are what they seem to be. I don't have a direct. I once tried to get hypnotically regressed back to a past life, and they were not successful. Turns out I'm very resistant to hypnosis, um, which makes it difficult for me to induce OBEs, but that's another topic altogether. But I did have this one experience. One time, many years ago, I had a dream, and it was an ordinary dream, but I dreamed I was with my brother, and we were going through like a house. It was like the upstairs apartment of a two-story house, and the upstairs was like a rental. And my brother and I were there, and we were reminiscing about when we were children and used to have a babysitter in this house. Well, when I woke up from the dream, my memories of that house and the babysitter and that time with my brother were like completely real, but it wasn't from this life at all. I asked my mother, hey, did you ever have, my brother Joe and I babysat by this man in a second story apartment? She said, no, we never, the only one who ever took care of you was, and she, named my aunt and actually a couple of women she knew and things like that. But it's like, no, I was never taken care of by a man. And yet I remembered, and I still remember, those memories have never changed and never altered. It's like I remember portions of a past life where I was a child and I was in this apartment, and I remember that the man who had the apartment had this big kind of like a China hutch thing, and he had some kind of a special thing. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was something that my brother and I always asked him to take this thing out of there was like a secret compartment in this China hutch, and he would take it out and show it to us and all of that. But it's like it's memories from when I was, to me, it seemed like I was probably 7, 8 years old or something like that, maybe younger even, maybe 6 or something years old. But it's definitely, I can't explain that with present life memories. I can only explain that with past life memories, and they seem there's nothing hypnotically planted or anything like that I. So I have to believe in past lives, and that's my only past life experience of that kind of thing, is my own personal memories of a past life, or at least that's the only way I can imagine that's what that is. And I don't remember any more than that. I don't remember any more than the babysitter and how the same babysitter. I remember he had a special toy room where he'd let the kids go in and play with the toys. He had a big pile of toys in there and a toy box and all this. And yeah, very vivid past life memories. So yeah, other than that, I've not really had any OBEs in which I've had past life connections at all. So anyway, that's where I stand on that. I probably don't have a lot of time here. Let me see about, let's see, Elias, question to Bob Peterson. Do you know if it's possible to visit your past life through astral projection? I don't know. People don't talk about that very much in OBE books. I've read many, many, many OBE books. I've read probably 200 or more. But I don't recall anyone really talking about going to past lives, although some OBE books say that you can, but they present it in such a way that I kind of question whether or not they're coming from real experience or not. Are they just fantasizing, or are they just giving somebody a line? I don't know, but I haven't read any credible experiences, OBEs, like from narratives and books and stuff like that, where they claim to have gone back to a past life and interacted or seen snippets. Now, if you're talking about, there are lots of past life regression books where people go back with their mind and visit past lives and relive some past life things, but I haven't heard about that in connection to out of body experience. Let's see, the question from Alex. You probably can if you access the Akashic records. Yeah, people, I mean, there are quite a few books that talk about the Akashic records, and they describe it as being like a big library with, columns and all of this. I've never been to that place. I have no personal experience of that. from C. Doot. There's something called past life regression, which is guided meditation to experience such a thing. Yep. You could probably find it on YouTube. Yep. Let's see. DBSS cubed. Anyone and everyone's goal, or at least should be, is on my bucket list for real. Okay, not sure what that's about, but okay. Oh, and then Myth posted a YouTube link to a Akashic Records link, which I've never watched that video. Let's see. Crollo question: are the frequencies on YouTube like theta and so on can help make a successful astral projection? Is there an effect of frequencies on the mind to make it on a state of doing astral projection? Yeah, there's this whole thing called binaural beats and hemisync. Monroe Institute and Robert Monroe kind of developed this hemisync technology based on binaural beats. And what the principle of that is that when you put one tone in your left ear and you put another tone in the other ear, your right ear, and you have the two tones are different. So let's say they're a few hertz difference in tones. So each ear is listening to a different tone. What that does is your brain tries to interpret that as a single sound, even though, and that's why you need headphones. But your brain tries to interpret that two different sounds as one sound. And what happens is it sounds, you kind of get this effect where it's going woo, 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 woo. And they call it the binaural beat, right? Because it seems like the noise is going up and down and up and down and up and down in a wave pattern. But in reality, both sounds are pure sounds in each ear. So they developed this technology, and what that does is when you're playing binaural beats, one in each ear, at different frequencies, it forces your brain to synchronize the two hemispheres of the brain. They're trying to interpret that sound as one sound, and it comes out as this noise. And what they found is that when you listen to binaural beats like that, that it helps induce OBEs, or at least it's like a good preparation for OBEs. And what I've found is I tend to listen to a lot of binaural beats. I've got lots of them on my phone, made from different people. My favorite is probably Jürgen Ziva's got a track. And I'm not sure where you can get it. I think I got it from a friend, but he probably sells that. But I like to listen to that one. It's very good. But it's basically a meditation, and the meditation includes binaural beats, and there's no guided. It's not a guided meditation. It's just music basically, and sounds and noises and binaural beats. And I like to use that to meditate before bed. Well, I usually do that around 8 p.m., so an hour before bed. And I find that doing the meditation with some kind of binaural beat stuff makes OBEs easier for me. Not during so I don't listen to binaural beats to induce an OBE. I listen to them as kind of an exercise to prep my body and brain for an OBE. If that makes sense. So, they're not sure quite why binaural beats help you induce OBEs, but it's probably something to do with the dissociation. It probably helps you to dissociate, and it's probably something with the brain, Let's see, another question from Myth. By the way, if anyone's wondering, Law of One describes Akashic Records as a potential future social memory complex of the earth. Okay. Let's see.
I don't think there's any more questions in there unless anyone wants to ask them, but I can ask a
Hello?
question. Oh yeah, go on.
Hello?
If you want to ask.
Actually, I have a question. I'm a novice and I haven't astral projected yet. But the fear where I'm getting not able to do the astral projection is because I have experienced years of sleep paralysis. Similar situation every other day. It makes me
Okay.
create a fear of getting in the similar situation of sleep paralysis, as it is said that sleep paralysis is a stage of astral projecting.
Yes, that's the two are definitely related, and sleep paralysis it's. I've got a very, very short article on my website, robertpeterson.org, and this predates my blog even. So it's a very old article, and it talks about sleep paralysis and what it is. And basically, when we go to sleep at night, your body has to paralyze itself in order to force you to not act out your dreams. Because if you were not paralyzed, you'd sleepwalk and you would act out your dreams. And you'd do things like jumping out of windows or falling down stairs because your dream hallucination doesn't match reality, right? So, sleep paralysis is just the paralysis that your body automatically does every time you sleep. Now, when there's this deal called ASP, which is awareness during sleep paralysis, and that's where your mind wakes up. Usually, your mind wakes up before sleep paralysis is done. Usually, it's at the when you're waking up in the morning, but it can also happen when you're falling asleep at night. But sleep paralysis, you're on that cusp between waking and sleeping, and at that cusp, it's very common you're halfway between the hallucinated world of dreams and reality. And so what can happen is people in sleep paralysis get agitated and concerned that, I can't move my body, this is scary. What if something grabs me? And they'll start hallucinating monsters, or creatures, demons, and as a matter of fact, I think that a lot of the mythology that we have surrounding demons and the names of demons and all of this and demonology comes from people's sleep paralysis experiences. But it's very common to hallucinate monsters, and it's usually a manifestation of your own fear. And it's natural. It's natural to be afraid because you can't move, you feel helpless, you feel paralyzed, and any little insecurity you have, whether it's conscious or subconscious, can become manifested as a very real, hallucination. People really see hags, and it's very common to see what they call the Hat Man, and that's a dark clothed figure, usually a man, and he's wearing a hat, and you can't quite see his eyes. He looks sinister, or maybe the eyes glow red, or something like that. Or another common one is old hag syndrome, or hagging, and
I
that's
say,
where you have. Go ahead.
can I share my sleep paralysis? It was similar for almost 10 years. Not even 1 year or 2 years. For the 10 years, every other day, this sleep paralysis was similar. Like, I used to wake up in the middle of my dream, and then suddenly someone used to call me, or I used to get a feeling that someone is standing behind me. Until unless I can see them, I used to get stuck and freeze, and that's the stage I used to get the sleep paralysis. So I never got the answer, and still I want the answer why it was for so many years, not even a few weeks or months, but 10 years. It was similar paralysis.
I can't. I don't know why it would happen to you for that length of time, but I think there's a lot of things that can affect it. But the glory is that sleep paralysis. It took me 10 years before I learned the trick of converting sleep paralysis into astral projection. And what the trick is, and it's explained in this little article on my website, but the trick is you have to basically, when you find yourself in sleep paralysis, you have to ignore the demons and ignore the fear, just keep yourself calm, close your eyes, and then basically imagine that you're moving forward until you're like 15 feet or 5 meters away from your physical body. But just keep pushing your consciousness forward. And then once you're that far away, you can open your eyes and you'll be in the astral body. My theory at the time I wrote the article is that when we're in sleep paralysis and all of this, that we're in the etheric body or the energy body that is associated with the physical. And so you can't, your energy body can't be dislodged or freed from your physical body until you die, unless you're like a spirit medium, in which case they have the special ability to do that. But um, sleep paralysis, if you learn that trick of basically pushing forward and using it to leave your body, that's a wonderful gateway, right? You can, if you can get past the fear. And the part of getting past the fear is just realizing that there's that what you're seeing are hallucinations, are manifestations of your own fear. So my advice is to use that sleep paralysis. Don't let it, don't let it in, don't let it get you down. Don't let it hinder what you're doing or what you want to do. Leverage it. Use it for astral projection. And like I said, it took me literally 10 years to figure that out, because before then I would like thrash against the paralysis, and I'd turn left and turn right, and I'd try everything I could to get out away from my body, and it wouldn't work. Nothing would work. I would just be paralyzed there. And then I learned that trick of just basically closing my eyes and imagining myself moving forward. And at that point, it's easy, right? Well, it's not easy because it takes an effort to do that. But basically, these hallucinations, you have to realize that they're hallucinations, and basically dispel them. Just say you're not real, go away, or whatever, and just, believe in yourself, believe in your ability, stand firm, and don't let it scare you. Don't. I mean, it's natural to be scared, because this is. I mean, you'll see very realistic, demons or monsters, or, like I said, the Hat Man or the Hag or whatever. They're very realistic. I mean, it's like you're there in the room. They're with you, and it's like they're in your face, right? But you have to ignore that and just get past them, and just ignore the fact that they're there. Affirm that they're not real, and you're not going to let it stop you. And I think a lot of times the problem is that these things are kind of put in our way as a roadblock, and it's kind of like a test from our higher self. Or in Hindu terminology, maybe they call it the Atman, Atman, the Atman, or higher
Atma.
self, whatever. Yeah.
Atma.
I think that higher self places obstacles in front of you to keep you from getting beyond, from getting into a situation that you can't handle. And once you get past the fear, then you're ready to proceed. Once you can stand up to the demons or whatever is there, and it's better to be angry. I always say this: it's better to be angry than it is to be afraid, right? So it's, if you find yourself confronting some kind of demon or monster, or if it's behind you and you can't see it, like you said, just affirm that you're more powerful than it is. Tell it you're a hallucination. I command you to go away. You just insist. You're not going to bother me. Go away. And once you can get through that fear barrier, it's like a barrier. It's like an obstacle that your own subconscious is placing in front of you to keep you from leaving your body. Once you can dispel that, face that fear, and get beyond it, and say, "I'm not going to let this, stop me. I'm going to keep going ahead anyway." Then you'll have passed the test, right? And then your higher self, your Atman or whatever, will no longer throw these roadblocks in front of you. You won't need to see these demons and ghosts or whatever scares you in sleep paralysis anymore. You will have gotten beyond that and able to explore. So that's my best advice is, face the fear, and just, it's natural to be afraid, and it's only human to be afraid in these confrontational situations, whether it's non-physical or physical. But it's okay to be afraid, right? But you still have to tell yourself to go forward, to move forward, keep going. Just wait out the experience a little longer. I'm just going to let it go, and I'm just going to ignore this being in the room. Or what some people do is they imagine it, a shield of light between you and it, or imagine a bubble of light encasing you, that you can't be harmed. These kind of protection things, so that the being is powerless to get in, and that way they can get beyond the fear. And the fear is what's causing the hallucination of the demon anyway, to begin with. And it's like I said, it's to me, it's like you're being thrown roadblocks by your subconscious or your higher self. And once you get beyond those roadblocks, then it doesn't need to do that anymore. I rarely see anything like that. I don't have scary experiences like that anymore.
Totally understood. My question, maybe my answer was in your uh, explanation only. As you said, you have experience for 10 years, and same I told that I have experience for 10 years. So my answer is completely understood. Maybe it was just a training for me, and I have to just push out.
Yep. So basically, and like I said, it's better to be, because if you are afraid of these things that you see, if a demon appears in front of you or whatever, if you're afraid of it, you're giving power to it. So your best advice is to be angry instead, because it's hard to transmute fear into something like love. Some people do it and recommend it, but to me, it's like it's easier to become angry and tell this thing, I'm not going to let you interfere with my out of body experience. Go away and get really pissed off if you have to, right? Because in the end, these things, I mean, even if these things are real, they're basically powerless to hurt you or affect you. And you're more powerful than they are. They're usually afraid of you. Whenever I've had situations where I've confronted things, and it's like they usually, when they see that you're not afraid, they usually go away or they run from you in fear of you. So what you have to do is turn the tables on fear. Okay, so I better. It's already 6 o'clock. So I've already gone about an hour. Let me see if I can find any more questions here. I see Cloud Gazer. I've heard the best approach is to let go and stop trying to force an AP. Is that accurate? There's a certain value to letting go, and yeah, if you try too hard, it can also inhibit your ability to OBE. And what often is more effective is if you try really hard for a while, and then you give yourself a day or two to not try hard. I do, however, so in other words, try really hard to induce OBEs, but then give yourself breaks where you don't try at all. Because a lot of times, what you'll find is that you'll start having OBEs when you stop trying, right? It's because you're letting your conscious mind, you're getting it out of the way. It's got to be your subconscious mind has to take you out, and it's natural for your subconscious to take you out because it takes you out of body every night. What's unusual is for you to be conscious when that happens. So what happens is you have to let your subconscious do that work and get out of its way. And like I said, the best way to do that is to impress on your subconscious that you want this, and then then like you said, stop trying for a while. Don't force it. Then take breaks. In other words. So let me see what else. Asking in voice is also encouraged. You might
There's a bit
up
of
your question again.
spam. I think the
Yeah.
next one is by Elias. Is the etheric body the same as your astral body?
Is the etheric body the same as your astral body? I mean, in the literature they talk about astral bodies and etheric bodies and all of this, and I don't really believe in bodies. I don't believe in multiple bodies. What I believe is that our consciousness is focused, and when we're here, right now, when I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, our consciousness is focused on the physical. When we change to a different environment like the astral, it's just changing our focus, and the body we perceive is just a body schema. It's just we're so ingrained through physical experience, years of physical experience, to think of ourselves in terms of eyes and ears and nose and mouth and hands and feet and legs and all of this fleshy. Need any of that stuff. I've had many OBEs in which I was just like a sphere of consciousness. I was just a pinpoint, infinitesimal pinpoint of awareness. And it had nothing to do, there was no body image and no body schema. right? And so you don't really need an astral body or an etheric body to interact. But the trouble is your mind, your brain, when you get back to your physical body and want to remember what happened to you, it helps to interpret your experience. So it's like what I say, a lot of people say that they get out of body and they're blind. Okay, so my advice is you go like 15 feet or 5 meters away from your body, again, that magical distance, and then you make a conscious effort to open your eyes. I don't believe you're really opening your astral body's eyes or etheric body, but what you're doing is you're shifting your brain, your mind, into a mode where it can interpret your experience in terms of physical eyesight. And so it's a matter of focus. So I tend to not think of in terms of etheric body and astral body. Although earlier, I was talking about an energy body associated with the physical. And that's how people describe it. But really, it's more like we're tapping in on some kind of stream of consciousness. There's some kind of data flow out there, and we're just picking up on that. So when we experience something, we're just picking up on that vibe, and we're focusing on it. So when people talk about being in the astral plane, I think it's more a matter of they're focused on a different level of experience. And I don't really think in terms of planes of existence. I think it's just different places, really. Anyway, that's my take on it.
When it comes to like the process of astral projection, like what are some of your favorite methods of doing so?
Well, my favorite, I like experimenting for one. I love trying new things to see if I can leave the body that way. My favorite technique, I've got again an article on my blog, and my blog is free, but I've got an article on my blog explaining my favorite technique. And the technique that I prefer, I mean, almost all of the techniques I use are motion based, and I think different people need different things. So some people are more visual, right? If you're an artist or whatever, you might be more visual. Some people are more tactile, so they get their more information from a sense of touch. Some people are more oriented toward the sense of hearing. So different people need different things. For me, what really helps the most is a sense of motion. So what I tend to do, and again, there's all just distilling this down to the smallest common denominator. I relax my body completely. First of all, you have to relax because that way you're starving your brain's temporal parietal junction of sense information. So you have to be relaxed. That sense of touch kind of is muted. Probably doesn't go away, but it's muted. You have to be. For me, I have to be as quiet, in a quiet environment, or use headphones, noise canceling headphones, or earplugs, or something like that, so that my sense of hearing is muted as much as possible. Again, sometimes it's not completely possible, but you do what you can. And then in a darkened room, and for me, it's like as black as I can get it usually. Some people recommend a dim light, very dim, because you don't want, if it's too dark, you can have problems of losing consciousness. Um, so anyway, for me, dark. So because you're muting your sense of sight as well. So you mute those three primary senses. Forgetting about taste and smell. You mute those senses to starve the TPJ of its sense data information that it's coming from, and then you start feeding your TPJ a false narrative. So you tell yourself, for example, I tell myself, I'm floating. I'm lying in my bed, but I'm floating on top of the bed, and I'm rocking back and forth. So I try to get to a feeling that I'm floating, and try to get that feeling of motion going back and forth, like uh, a bottle of water where the water is sloshing from one end of the bottle to the other, back and forth, up and down. And it's like your body is this giant bottle, and you try and you get this sense of motion that you're rocking. Or you could imagine, for example, that you're in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth. And that's the false narrative that you're giving to your brain. And then you increase that, And for me, what works best is when I quiet my mind at that point, and I imagine that the rocking's going to keep going on even after I quiet my mind. So I just narrow my mind down to a single train of thought where there aren't any emotions, there aren't any feelings, there aren't any thoughts going through my head. I'm just feeling this rocking motion, and I narrowed my consciousness down to that little tiny pinprick of awareness as much as possible. And then what happens is I usually at that point start seeing hypnagogic imagery, which means that you're on the border of sleep. And this is a natural thing again that happens to us when we fall asleep, but we usually don't. We're usually not conscious when it happens, so we don't pay attention. And in fact, when we fall asleep, a lot of times it's because of this fantasy trap. We start seeing hypnagogic hallucinations, and we think to ourselves, well, what if, right? And it's this what if that pulls you into the dream. And so that's how we get pulled into a dream. So what I do is when I start seeing hypnagogic hallucinations, and I see them very realistically at this point in front of me, I'll see, let's just say, for example, I'll see a baseball in front of me. I'll take ownership of that baseball. I'll think, that hypnagogic image was created by my own mind, my own subconscious mind. This is my baseball now. So I take ownership of it, and I try and twist it and turn it, because it's easier to visualize an object that's moving and twisting and turning than it is a stationary object. So you take the baseball and you watch and you try to make it spin, and you try and make it move, and you try to pull it toward you and push it away from you, and you just keep manipulating this baseball. Okay, and then what you'll find is that it may disappear. All of a sudden, it'll explode into dust and it'll be gone. But then, if you wait another second with a quiet mind, you'll have another hypnagogic image appear to you. Now, you might have a large hypnagogic image, appear to you, like maybe maybe the moon appears to you, and it's the size of, as if you were standing on the moon. Well, that's too big to really, or psychologically, you might think that's too big to take control of the moon because it's too heavy or whatever. So you just wait for it to disappear, and you take the next one. Maybe now a hammer appears in front of you, and so you say, that's my hammer, and you take logical control of that hammer, and you twist and turn and move it around. But you keep doing this one by one, and they keep, they keep disappearing or exploding into dust. And after a while, though, they start to stabilize. So if you do this enough times, you'll get an object that doesn't disappear, and you can take and grab that and pull it, and it'll, you can like pretend that you have a gravity between you and that object, right? If it was a planet, for example, then it would have a strong gravitational pull on you. So you can pretend that there's a gravitational pull or some kind of a magnetic force on this object that's pulling you away from your body. So for me, I'm sitting there, I'm still floating, or feel like I'm sloshing back and forth in that, like in that bottle. I'm floating there, and I'm watching these hypnagogic images, and then I take control of them until I can get one that's stable, and then I just, since it becomes stable and mine, I just basically develop a gravitational pull to that thing and use it to pull myself out of body. And that's kind of the best way I can describe it. And that's my favorite technique, to leave the body. Lately, though, I've been doing some other experiments. If you've ever seen on television where you have a robotic clean room where you're like, doctors have to reach in to examine a patient that's in a like an isolation room or something like that because of a contagion, and they reach their hands through these plastic gloves. I don't know if you've ever seen that on a television show or anything like that, but you have these plastic gloves. So one of the things I've been experimenting with lately is I will imagine that there's a set of these plastic gloves in front of me, and I'll try to use the tactile sensation of my hands, my fingers, going into these gloves, right? And I'll try to make that as realistic as possible. So and that will have an effect too of kind of becoming real. But anyhow, you have to convince your mind with the false narrative to let go of your current stream of consciousness into this false narrative. And once you're pulled out of body, then you can let the false narrative go, right? Then you drop the hallucination, you drop your image or your your hypnagogic image. You drop any visualizations or anything. You don't need that anymore. You're basically sucked into the experience. You're just using that tactile imagination or visual imagination of the moving object, or whatever, as a device to get you to that out of body state. So that's basically what I do. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's kind of what I do. And like I said, there's an article in my blog where I kind of go over that, and I created. It's not a very good, it's not professional quality video, but in the video I've got slides that I go through to explain each part of the process. So let's see, what else do we got here? I should probably take the last question. I'll let Gene decide. Last question, Gene.
Oh God.
And my email that I've been waiting for still hasn't arrived, so I'm kind of not happy about that.
There's a few questions.
I can jump on one if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
Just to build on what you were talking about, desensory. We were kind of chatting about it in the text to voice. I don't know how familiar you are with the Law of One, but we bring it up sometimes because some of us have read it. But in it, they talk about like the pyramids being built originally as basically a giant desensory chamber. And you were talking a little bit earlier about a dark, quiet room and so on and so forth. And so we were talking
Right.
about. We've talked a lot before about like an extreme desensory situation where like I don't know if you've ever seen or heard anything about like the quietest room in the world where they have like extra thick foam and the decibels actually read negative within the room, and
Yeah, I'd
people
love to try
can't
that
spend
room.
so like people can't spend typically more than like 45 minutes in that room. So I watched a video about a guy who spent about an hour and a half in there trying to break the world record. And while I was watching it, he was describing an experience because he was obviously not versed in like astral projection or anything like that, but he was describing things that people describe when they astral project, and he was having these like internal breakthroughs that people come across through deep meditation and things like that as he was going through this experience, because he actually shut the lights off while he was in there too, just like as an extra thing to do, and so my theory is if you meditate and you learn to focus on, for example, we were talking about the breath. If you learn to focus on the breath, and if you are actually focusing on it enough, you can essentially turn off or at least be distracted from all the other things that you might be feeling from your body, whether it's like muscle twitches or the air across your skin or whatnot. So the more you can learn how to shut off the other senses influencing your body, whether or not you learn how to do that through meditation, or if you put yourself in an extreme desensory situation like that quietest room in the world in the dark, my theory is that you can force an astral projection, or at least force yourself to be desensitized from your body enough to access your consciousness at another level. Do you agree with that?
I do. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I would love to try that world's quietest room. I don't know how possible that is, but that sounds like a
Me
great time
too.
to
Me too. Yeah, I know, right?
I've tried these flotation tanks where you're put in a dark, quiet room that's got like real high buoyancy Epsom salt.
Yeah, they add Epsom salt to the water so that you float. The
Yeah.
desensory tanks. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Sensory deprivation tanks. Right. I've tried that, and what I found is that I was too distracted by the wetness of my skin, and in order, to me, it was too distracting to have that wetness on my skin, and that might be something you can get used to. But I agree with you that the more you can isolate or shut out your physical senses. See, I think it, and I said this in my latest book, Hacking the Out of Body Experience. I think it goes back to this temporal parietal junction of the brain. Your TPJ, it's situated halfway between the temporal lobe and the parietal lobe, so it's kind of halfway between the senses of touch and the senses of sound. And of course, their sense of sight is also routed like through many places throughout the brain, because humans tend to be so sight oriented. But basically, the TPJ is responsible for pulling all of this data and coming up with a story of experience, is what I call it. And that's basically a your experience of what's happening to you right now. And when it can't get this information from the senses, when you starve the senses away from your TPJ, it's forced on to base that belief of where you are, where you're standing, your current situation. It's forced to use other data for that. And the data that it uses are like your assumptions and beliefs, right? And all of that kind of stuff. Like you believe you're affected by gravity this way. You believe that you believe that you're breathing air, and you believe that whatever, you're lying down, and all of this. You have these core beliefs. But what happens is the human brain is highly influenced by your imagination. Right. So, I mean, if for example, if a man imagines vividly a sexual scenario, he can get a hard on, he can get turned on or whatever just from his imagination, and that is because your imagination is feeding a false narrative to your physical body. It's basically telling your body that you're experiencing something, and it's not really there. So that's kind of the trick of it, is to starve your TPJ of this sense information, and then to create a false narrative. So you say, well, I'm not lying on my bed, I'm standing up. And you tell yourself, my arms aren't at my side, my arms are out in front of me, and I'm touching this. Or a couple examples I have in my latest book, Hacking the Out of Body Experience. One of the authors, and I pull resources from all kinds of different authors in the book, but one of the authors suggests that you imagine that you're at the front of a fast-moving bullet train. So one of these Japanese bullet trains that can go 200 miles per hour or whatever, and you imagine that you're at the front, and then you just start running toward the back. So you're going even faster, and you just visualize that this is happening. And basically, what that's doing is you're giving your TPJ a false narrative about what's happening to you. You're basically derailing your TPJ's story of experience, and you're basically feeding it information, right? That you're running. This train is screaming fast, and you're running. Or maybe, let's just say, not a train. Maybe you're just flying through space toward a black hole or something like that. But you feed your brain a false narrative of what's happening to you, and you feed it so fast. So your brain has limitations on how fast it can process information. And if you tell yourself that you're in a situation that it's too fast for your brain to handle, it'll have to go with it, right? So if your brain can't keep up, if you were really running through down a bullet train and seeing lights whirring by you, or in a field of stars shooting into space and seeing stars going by you at a hypersonic, wormhole speeds or whatever, your brain couldn't keep up. So it has to kind of go with it, because that's how the brain works. It has to take on that story of experience based on the false information you're feeding it. And like I said, the whole goal here is to derail your brain's story of experience. And once you have it derailed, once it's off the tracks, then you can then you're out of body. Basically, you're left perceiving whatever information stream is out there that you have access to, that's not part of your physical senses. So you drop all your false narrative, you drop your hallucination or your visualizations, you drop any of those things, and now you're experiencing in a non-physical world. And that's basically how it goes. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the IAC, the International Association of Consciousness or something like that. I forget if that's the right acronym. But the IAC has a astral projection lab in Portugal, where they created a room that they called the projectarium or something like that. And it's very similar. It's a very darkened room. It's sensory deprivation. It's a completely black room, and you're basically put on a board over a pit. So you have this sense of having nothing in front of you, nothing behind you, nothing underneath you, even because you're lying on this board, and the board is over a pit. So you have this complete sense of possibly falling or whatever. So it's another way to change that story of experience, and it's a very similar thing to this sound room that or the room in which no light can escape or whatever your room you were talking about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. It's nice to get some validation from a professional about that, because I've been thinking about that for a long time, talking about it for a long time, and it just seems right from the information that I've gathered, at least.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, I should probably get off the call. It's
Yeah, definitely.
6:30
We'll let
now,
you
and I got to
go.
go figure out why my email didn't come through and all of that I was expecting.
That's
But
fine.
again, I wanted to thank Gene for having me on the call,
Yeah, thank you
and
for coming so
maybe we
spontaneously.
can. Yeah, it was kind of spontaneous. Well, my wife sprang it on me this morning that she said, by the way, Bob, I've got a meeting tonight of, she's on the board of directors for a lake association. It's like, by the way, Bob, I've got a lake association board meeting tonight I've got to be on. So it's like, okay, so I don't have to worry about, her wanting to go out to dinner or whatever we were going to do tonight. It's like this, I knew I would have some time where my attention wasn't needed. So it's great to be able to do that, even if it was last minute. So
Yeah, no,
thanks,
thank
Gene,
you.
anyway.
Yeah, if you have any more, if you want to do a spontaneous event in the future, just message me, and you can come along. You might have some big breakthrough you want to share with us all. We're all ears anytime.
Yeah, sounds good. No, I
Yeah.
enjoy talking about this. This is my pet topic, and there's nothing more I love in the world than talking about this stuff,
Yeah.
other than doing it, of course. So yeah, I'm great to be here. So I'm going to drop off, but thank you all for having me, and I will talk to you next time.
Yep. Thank you. See
So
you,
much,
Bob.
Bob.
Thanks, Bob. See ya.
Bye bye.